Tonight, on First at 9 this Wednesday, the 2nd of July 2025. Fifth tranche. IMF Executive Board approves the disbursement of the $350 million fifth tranche to Sri Lanka under the Extended Fund Facility Program. Total IMF financing up to $1.74 billion. Aviation probe. Sri Lanka to establish a special presidential investigation committee to investigate fraud, corruption and irregularities within Sri Lankan airlines and airport and aviation services. Countdown. With US reciprocal tariffs set to resume on July 9th, Cabinet spokesperson assures the Sri Lankan government is confident of reaching a deal to minimize the impact on the nation's economy. Global connectivity. Elon Musk's Starlink internet service officially launched in Sri Lanka. Government anticipates Starlink to provide a significant contribution to Sri Lanka's digitization journey.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome. You're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story this evening. The International Monetary Fund has approved the disbursement of the approximately $350 million fifth tranche to Sri Lanka following the completion of the fourth review under the country's 48-month extended fund facility. This brings the total IMF financial support for Sri Lanka under the EFF to about $1.74 billion since the program's approval in March 2023.
The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund approved the disbursement of the fifth tranche to Sri Lanka following the successful completion of the fourth review under the 48-month extended fund facility. As a result, Sri Lanka is set to receive an additional $350 million. On the 20th of March 2023, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund approved the 48-month extended arrangement of around $3 billion to Sri Lanka under its extended fund facility. Thereby, Sri Lanka received the first tranche of the IMF bailout package totaling $332 million on the 21st of March 2023. Following that, the country received $337 million, $336 million and $334 million respectively in the last three tranches. With the release of this latest tranche, total disbursements to Sri Lanka under the EFF have now reached approximately $1.7 billion. Issuing a statement, IMF Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Evan Papayaryu, said the program supports Sri Lanka's efforts to durably restore macroeconomic stability by restoring fiscal and debt sustainability while protecting the vulnerable, safeguarding price and financial sector stability, rebuilding external buffers, strengthening governance and reducing corruption vulnerabilities, and enhancing growth-oriented structural reforms.
Even prior to the IMF Executive Board's meeting to assess Sri Lanka's fourth review under the Extended Fund Facility, which would determine the release of the fifth tranche, misleading claims had begun to circulate among the public, particularly regarding electricity tariff revisions. Speculation suggested that the IMF would withhold approval due to the government's alleged non-compliance with key reform benchmarks. Some even went so far as to assert that the review had been delayed owing to the government's shortcomings. However, these concerns have now been addressed. The IMF has concluded its fourth review and the disbursement of the fifth tranche has officially been approved.
Cine Campus Open Day, May masa 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cine Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Enrolling now for the June 2025 intake and complete your degree in 2 years.
Javayata Balayak.
The 2026 Appropriation Bill is scheduled to be presented to Parliament in October this year. The second reading of the bill or the budget speech is scheduled to be made in November, while the third reading and budget debate will be held during November and December. The timeline was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers. Cabinet also approved the preparation of the national budget for 2026 in alignment with the government's A Wealthy Nation, A Beautiful Life policy framework, the Public Financial Framework, the Public Financial Strategy Statement and the National Policy Framework for 2026 through 2030. The government announced that the upcoming budget will be developed under the theme production economy and inclusive contribution to economic development. Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa says a special presidential investigation committee will probe the corruption and irregularities that occurred in Sri Lankan Airlines and the Airport and Aviation Services Company from 2010 until 2025. He made this statement during the cabinet briefing today. Meanwhile, commenting on the US reciprocal tariffs, the cabinet spokesperson said the government is confident of reaching a deal which minimizes the negative effects the tariffs may have on Sri Lanka before July 9th.
ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සේවය පිළිබඳ ජනාධිපති විමර්ශන කමිටුවක් පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් මේ වෙන විටත් ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සේවයේ හිටපු සභාපතිවරයෙක් අත්අඩංගුවේ ඉන්නවා. දැන් මේ අල්ලස් කොමිසමත් වෙනම විමර්ශන කරගෙන යනවා. එතකොට මේ පහුගිය කාලෙම මාධ්‍යට වාර්තාත් ආවා මේ ශිරන්ති රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මියව අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීමක් සම්බන්ධව. එහෙම තියෙද්දි මේ ඔබතුමාලා මේ පැත්තේ විමර්ශනයදී තවත් ජනාධිපති විමර්ශන කමිටුවකුත් පත් කරලා දැන් මේ දෙපැත්තෙම හොයන්නත් පටන් ගන්න හදන්නේ.
ඒකටම එතුමා මේ වැලියමුණ වාර්තාව ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක ගැන ඔබතුමාලට විශ්වාසයක් නැද්ද? ඒකට අමතරවද මේක
අපේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා 2010-25.
This committee has been appointed to investigate matters spanning from 2010 to 2025. The Valley Amuna report does not cover the full scope of concerns. Additionally, the Bribery Commission and the CID are focusing on specific issues related to Sri Lankan Airlines and the Airport and Aviation Services. Our committee will conduct a broader investigation covering everything from aircraft procurement to staff recruitment. Previous governments considered selling these loss-making entities, but that is not the approach of this administration. We aim to understand why these institutions incurred losses and obtain recommendations from this committee to address those issues.
මේ ආයතන පාඩුනේ ඇයි? ඒකට අපිට යොදන්න පුළුවන් පිළියම් මොනවද කියන එක නිර්දේශ කරන්න තමයි මේ කමිටුව පත් කරලා තිබෙන්නේ.
ඔබතුමාත් සහතිකයක් දුන්නා මේ කැබිනට් මාධ්‍ය හමුවේදීම අපේ රටේ තෙල් ස්ටොක් එකක් තියෙනවා මාස දෙකකට සරලන තෙල් තියෙනවා බයක් ඇති කරගන්න එපා කියලා. එහෙම තීද්දී තෙල් මිල වැඩි උනේ ඇයි?
මහින්ද ජයසිංහ මහත්මයා කියනවා ලංකාවේ තෙල් මාස දෙකකට ස්ටොක් කරන ටැංකිය එහෙම නැහැ එම පහසුකමක් නැහැ කියලා. මේ අමාත්‍යවරුන් මේ පරස්පර අදහස් දැක්වීම තුළින් ජනතාව නොමග යවනවා.
මමනේ කැබිනට් මාධ්‍ය ප්‍රකාශක තෙල් ගබඩා කිරීමේ
I am the cabinet spokesperson. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is the authority that is aware of fuel storage capacity. The CPC chairman held a press briefing recently and clarified the matter. Additionally, the Minister of Power and Energy made statements both in Parliament and to the public. When you asked me previously, we did have sufficient stocks for 2 months. At that time, there was public panic due to fears of shortage, but the situation has now been stabilized. We will assure the public that we have sufficient fuel stocks for the coming 2 months. Globally, fuel prices increased in June, particularly over the last 2 weeks. Our price revisions are based on those global trends. If prices drop in July, those benefits will be reflected in the August pricing. Frankly, we could have provided greater relief if the CPC didn't have historical debt and if there hadn't been corruption under previous governments.
මීට වඩා සාධාරණයක් ජනතාවට කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට ඇත්තටම තෙල් සංස්ථාවට ණය ගෙවන්න තිබ්බේ නැත්තම් සහ පෞගේ කාලේ එහෙම වංචා සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබ්බේ නැත්තම්.
ඇමරිකානු බදු ප්‍රතිපත්තිය ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්න බොහොම ආසන්න වෙමින් තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට මේ රජය මේ කඩිනම් වැඩපිළිවෙලකට ගිහිලා තියෙනවද මේ වෙනකොට?
ඇමරිකා එක්සත් ජනපදයේ විසින් නිකුත් කරන ලද
The United States gave us a 90-day window to discuss reciprocal tariffs, which ends on July 9th. To minimize the impact on Sri Lanka, several rounds of discussions have been held by the Ministry of Finance. We also conducted multiple Zoom meetings with the Office of the US Trade Representatives. Our delegation has met them twice in person as well. We believe there is potential to negotiate and amend some tariff measures before the July 9th deadline. Our next step will depend on the response we receive from the US and its trade representatives.
ඒ දිනානුව අවසන් වෙනකොට ඇමරිකන් එක්සත් ජනපද රජයේ පැත්තෙන් එහි වෙළඳ කටයුතු දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ පැත්තෙන් දක්වන ප්‍රතිචාරය අනුව ඊළඟ පියවර ගැන කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙත් මනාපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
යාඩියා ලොව වැඩියෙන්ම අලෙවි ඉලෙක්ට්‍රික් ස්කූටරය අවාන්ස් ඔටෝ වෙතින්.
The Sri Lanka Expo exhibition will be held next year in Colombo following a 14-year hiatus, aiming to attract over 1,500 exporters, SMEs ready for export, as well as buyers and investors. Meanwhile, government has decided to provide scholarships for the best performing students at the advanced level examination to complete their first degree at a top international university. With that, here's more on the key decisions taken during this week's cabinet meeting. Scholarships are to be provided for 20 to 50 students who achieve the highest Z scores in the main subject streams of the GCE Advanced Level Examination to study their first degree at foreign universities. 200 million rupees have been allocated for the project under the 2025 budget, through which scholarships are to be awarded to the selected students to complete their degree program for a maximum of 4 years at universities ranked in the top 500 in international university rankings. Sri Lankans will be given opportunities to serve in the agricultural and fisheries villages in the Yongwol province of South Korea for a 5 to 8 month period under the seasonal worker employment program under the E8 visa category. Sri Lanka will sign the relevant memorandum of understanding with the local government authority of the Yongwol province. Cabinet approved the implementation of the 5-year National Action Plan for the National Child Protection Policy. The action plan has been prepared encompassing 10 subject areas and incorporating ideas and proposals from stakeholders representing multiple sectors. Approval was granted to conduct research on the palm leaf manuscript collection of Sri Lankan origin in the Netherlands. The National Archives Department of Sri Lanka secured a competitive grant of €384,248 alongside 5 other parties, including the Open University of the Netherlands, to conduct the proposed research from 2025 to 2029. Sri Lanka will implement the Commonwealth Meridian software system for the management of state loans. An annual maintenance fee of £12,500 will be paid to the Commonwealth Secretariat for the use of the system. The Sri Lanka Expo exhibition is to be held in 2026 after a 14-year hiatus at the BMICH complex, aiming to attract approximately 1,500 participants, including exporters, small and medium-scale enterprises ready for export, as well as buyers and investors. The Sri Lanka Export Development Board previously conducted the Sri Lanka Expo exhibition in 1992, 1994, 1997 and 2012. Sanitary facilities, including standard lavatory systems, will be constructed in 20 urban areas identified by the Urban Development Authority for the convenience of local and foreign tourists that influx daily to these areas. An estimated 525.29 million rupees will be spent for the project. Cabinet granted approval to enter into MOUs with eligible countries to purchase pharmaceuticals and medical appliances on a government-to-government basis when essential, and supply pharmaceuticals and medical appliances that are difficult to be supplied via the general supply chain.
We identified 7 countries from which we are already import medicines and presented them with a list of 113 types of medicines and inquired about their ability to supply them. 4 of the 7 countries have already sent us a list of medicines they can supply. The suppliers have to be registered with the Medicines Regulatory Authority of their relevant country, and the procurement will be done through Sri Lanka State Pharmaceutical Corporation. The next step is to sign MOUs with these countries. Pakistan, Bangladesh, India and Indonesia have presented this list of medicines.
Sinek Campus Open Day මේ මස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Sinek Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Apico Next Gen. Make the leap to faster sleep.
Dr. Shyam Pathiraja, chairman of the Solar EPC Association, announced that legal action would be taken against the Electricity Board and the relevant ministers who he claims are undermining efforts to support renewable energy entrepreneurs. He made this statement during a public consultation hosted by the Public Utilities Commission in Colombo today. Small business owners who attended the event also voiced their concerns, highlighting that the lack of support and indifference from government agencies has had a significant negative impact on the growth of the renewable energy sector. As of today, Sri Lanka generates 54.05 gigawatt hours of electricity daily, with 69.87% or 37.76 gigawatt hours coming from renewable sources. Hydroelectric plants operated by the Ceylon Electricity Board contribute 23.16 gigawatt hours, while wind farms provide 1.89 gigawatt hours. Private solar plants generate 7.05 gigawatt hours, small private hydro plants add 3.41 gigawatt hours, and small wind plants supply 2.13 gigawatt hours. Rooftop solar panels contribute about 1.7 gigawatt hours. Despite this, solar and wind power combined still only total around 11 gigawatt hours per day. At a public consultation held by the Public Utilities Commission, participants voiced concern over state institutions' lack of support for renewables, blaming it for stalling the sector's growth.
ෆ්ලෝටින් සෝලර් එකකට අවසර ලැබෙනවා. අපි වාරිමාර්ග
When we seek approval for a floating solar project, we are sent from one office to another. The Department of Irrigation's head office tells us to contact a different branch only for that office to claim the land isn't under their jurisdiction. They direct us to the district secretary, adding yet another layer to the process. Securing government land for renewable energy projects involves a frustrating and time-consuming approval process with significant delays caused by bureaucratic red tape and lack of coordination between agencies.
මේ අනුමැති ලබා ගන්න විශාල ප්‍රමාදයක් තියෙනවා.
අපේ තියෙන ජලාශ
We can generate 500 times our current electricity requirement by using only 20% of the country's water sources, including reservoirs, lagoons, small and medium-scale tanks, and the Mahavali system.
ගුණයක් අපිට ජෙනරේට් කරන්න පුළුවන්. Nobody is interested in doing this. Sectoral expert මොනවද කරන්නේ?
Sectoral experts are publishing data and releasing statements to the media about monkeys. They are intentionally misleading the public, the government, and the government institutions. The government employee misleading the government on purpose can be considered a crime.
අපරාධ සහගත වරදක්.
Meanwhile, comments were also made regarding the announcement by the Electricity Board on the 22nd of June that it had decided to increase the payment for a unit of electricity produced by rooftop solar panel systems with a battery to 45 rupees and 80 cents.
They said they have increased the solar tariff to 45 rupees. What a ridiculous statement was this? Everyone who meets me on the roads are saying, දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ business වලට හොඳයි නේද? මොන හොඳක්ද යකාට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ?
What good? They have been destroyed. That is how the CEB conduct their campaigns. Renewable energy generation surpasses 70% on 2 days in July. But they publicize it as the renewable energy generation surpasses 70% throughout the entire month. What are these statements?
මොනවද මේ statement?
There's no circular to this day that pays 45 rupees and 80 cents to renewable energy. If these illegal activities are not stopped, we will meet you in court.
Meanwhile, Viran Fernando, the Senior Deputy Director of the Board of Investment, said that many of the proposals for renewable energy projects that have been submitted so far have not been approved due to the apathy of state institutions. Welcome back. You're once again joining First at 9. A delegation of Indian entrepreneurs currently visiting Sri Lanka has expressed keen interest in exploring new investment opportunities in the country while also contributing to the country's entrepreneurial growth. The delegation conveyed these views during a meeting with President Anura Dissanayake yesterday.
Comprising around 20 prominent Indian business leaders, the delegation includes heads of several major companies. The visit is coordinated by the Confederation of Indian Industry and aims to strengthen existing investment ties while exploring new avenues for collaboration. During the meeting, President Dissanayake emphasized Sri Lanka's increasingly favorable environment for investors. He briefed the delegation on the government's efforts to strengthen the legal framework and institutional infrastructure needed to attract and sustain large-scale investments. The President also underscored the government's focus on attracting regional investors and ensuring they are provided with the necessary facilities and support. The Indian entrepreneurs noted that Sri Lanka's strategic location in the region significantly enhances its appeal to investors. Accordingly, they reiterated that their focus remains on tapping into promising new investment prospects across key sectors, particularly in sectors such as energy, infrastructure, the digital economy, tourism, and agriculture. They also highlighted their focus on enhancing entrepreneurial capacity.
Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk officially launched the Starlink internet service in Sri Lanka today, bringing the satellite-based high-speed internet service to the island nation for the first time. The Sri Lankan government said the launch of Starlink would contribute greatly to the country's digitalization efforts. Starlink, a satellite network developed by tech billionaire Elon Musk's spaceflight company SpaceX to provide low-cost internet to remote locations, was first launched in 2019. As of mid-2025, Starlink service is available in over 130 countries and territories. Starlink distinguishes itself from other networks, particularly traditional internet service providers, through its use of low Earth orbit satellites. Unlike geostationary satellites used by other providers, Starlink's satellites orbit much much closer to Earth, resulting in lower latency and potentially higher speeds ranging from 50 to 250 megabits per second. As of June 26, 2025, there are currently 7,875 Starlink satellites in orbit, and SpaceX has been granted permission to fly 12,000 Starlink satellites, while the company has also filed paperwork with an international regulator to loft up to 30,000 additional spacecraft. Users on the ground access the broadband signals using a kit sold by SpaceX that contains a small satellite dish with a mounting tripod, a Wi-Fi router, cables and a power supply. In a post on X today, Musk announced that Starlink is now available in Sri Lanka, marking the official launch of the service in the country. Meanwhile, the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka commented on the launch of the Starlink internet service.
Starlink
will be providing its services to Sri Lankan users from this month onwards. Our institution has already approved the first batch of toolkits used to provide the service. We believe that this service will greatly contribute to the country's future digitalization and development of internet services.
Meanwhile, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed his gratitude to SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk for the launch of the Starlink internet service in Sri Lanka, adding that he hoped to meet Musk in the near future to explore further opportunities available for Sri Lanka's digital landscape. In 2024, former President Wickremesinghe met Musk in Indonesia to discuss the implementation of Starlink in Sri Lanka and committed to fast-tracking the application process to connect Sri Lanka with the global Starlink network. Welcome back to First at 9. The Colombo Bourse returned to positive territory today, with the ASPI rising 0.81% as a result of price gains in counters such as CT Holdings, Colombo Dockyard and Axis Engineering. The benchmark index closed at 18,141.79. The S&P SL20 also rose by 0.30% to close at 5,359.04, with high net worth and institutional investor participation observed in Ceylon Bank non-voting, Axis Engineering and Commercial Bank non-voting. Turnover crossed 7.8 billion rupees. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, offloading shares worth 314 million rupees. And up next, we have Sarah Rafayadin from Capital Alliance in our next segment, Economic Outlook.
With inflation stabilizing, interest rates continued to ease. The average prime lending rate declined by 8 basis points, while the weekly call money rate also edged down. Reserve money dipped slightly, mainly due to the reduced currency in circulation, reflecting more cautious liquidity conditions. Financial markets remained steady. Government bond yields were broadly flat, while foreign investor sentiments improved. This led to a net inflow of 3 billion rupees into the government securities, marking a return of external interest in local debt. On the external front, the rupee depreciated slightly, falling by 0.3% against the US dollar during the week. Year to date, it has weakened by 2.6% in line with the regional currency trends. Overall, the macro picture shows early signs of improvement. Co-inflation is turning, interest rates are easing, and foreign inflows are returning. These trends will be important to watch as Sri Lanka enters the second half of 2025.
That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.